gentlemen, and all the esteemed participants. Welcome to the CMO Talk series, Building Effective Framework for Brand Strategy in 2023. I'm your host, Hitesh Chittara. I'm the head of strategic marketing at Markets and Markets. I've been with the company for roughly 10 years in various capacities such as sales, pre-sales, strategic marketing, and my most recent assignment of managing the brand, PR, and communication related activities for my organization. I've also managed some of our key clients over a period of time and directly or indirectly contributed to their brand journey as well as marketing initiatives. Today, we have gathered some industry experts and seasoned strategists to engage in a thought-provoking panel discussion on the art and science of brand strategy in the ever-evolving business landscape. Now, whether you work for your clients to elevate and transform their brand or take care of the brand positioning of your own organization, there are a few common questions we are all facing today. One of which is, how should my strategy evolve considering everything which has been happening recently? And in this dynamic and ever-changing landscape, building a solid brand strategy is crucial. We are already halfway through 2023, and all of us have realized the importance of falling back on the fundamental art of building the brand while constantly innovating. In this discussion, we will unveil the secrets of success in creating a winning brand strategy, navigate the multi-generational maze of diverse audiences, conquer the omni-channel world, and explore the strategies for building a future-proof brand strategy. Now let's hear from our esteemed panelists as they introduce themselves and share their expertise in the realm of brand strategy. We'll start with David. David, please take a moment to introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Dave Mayer. I'm a senior partner at Lippincott and have been in consulting for 25 years, the majority of which has been at Lippincott. Lippincott's an 8-year-old brand and innovation firm and has worked to unify, for example, Coca-Cola with the ribbon, naming Amtrak and Verizon, working to transform the brands of Walmart, Starbucks, Delta, and Samsung, and many others. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, David, for that introduction. We're thrilled to have your valuable insights throughout the panel discussion. Next, we have Sean. Sean, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Kapoor. I work at Harman, which is a Samsung company. And in my current job, I'm responsible for the brand and customer strategy for our automotive business, specifically focused on growing our brands and revenue potential in the automotive space.
Thank you so much, Sean. Excited to have you on board and learn from your unique perspective. And finally, we have Tammy. Tammy, please introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm Tammy Gollotti. I head up corporate marketing and corporate communications at Hitachi Vantara, which is part of the conglomerate Hitachi. And I've been in high tech my entire career and B2B high tech, and with a focus on positioning and repositioning companies. Brand is always at the core of that. So very excited to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Looking forward to your invaluable perspective and insights. Also joining me today, I have Mr. Gaurav Chadha, who is the Vice President of Value Engineering at Markets and Markets, to share an inside-out perspective on the sections that we will cover today. Thank you so much for joining the call, Gaurav.
Thanks, Hitesh.
So now that we have been introduced to our esteemed panelists, let's dive into the discussion on our understanding of the market landscape and crafting the effective brand strategies for 2023. Now, we have divided the whole conversation into various sections. So section 1 will talk about understanding the market landscape. Now, my first question is around what are the key attributes that businesses should consider when analyzing the market landscape for crafting a brand strategy? David, I would start with you.
So when we do our first immersion of getting to understand the brand and where we want to reposition it or position it, we talk about the 4 C's. So we start off with the customer. Who is the audience? What do they value? How can we be relevant to them? Then we move to the core. What's authentic to us? What are the beliefs that we have about how we serve that relevant customer in a way that can be distinctive and stand out from others? Then competitors, understanding what are generic category benefits across the market, which we need to be relevant, but what's our opportunity to stand out? Finally, context, which is looking forward and saying, it's not only important to be relevant today, but we need to skate ahead of the puck and understand where the market's moving, and therefore how can the brand be relevant for the future.
Perfect. That's a great example of a framework which still holds true today. So let's talk global to local, and we can start with Tammy. Tammy, how does market size, geography, culture, and target customer demographics shape the brand strategy? Is it wise to be flexible on brand positioning as per geography, or should brands just stay mono?
So I'll start with, first of all, the brand strategy needs to be directly aligned to the corporate strategy. That's very, very critical. So there needs to be a mission, vision, purpose, and promise. And with that, there needs to be an understanding of how to align the brand to that. So that starts globally in terms of, what is that sort of northern light that we're looking at from a brand perspective. I would say the other thing is, if the company does not have that, then brand is responsible and accountable as the Sherpa to really help the company get there. And that starts again at the global level. I would say the second area is then looking at being data driven, really understanding the macro dynamics, really understanding the global and regional dynamics, and looking at how to understand the brand direction and the position that you want to have on a global basis, but then how to make that attributable to regions and countries. So getting personal with how to address that at the regional level becomes very, very important, so that we start to look at how do you make sure that you have a position that actually resonates with people where they live, where they buy, and within their own culture.
That's a great angle to it, Tammy. Thank you so much. Now let's talk about segmentation, and we can start with Sean, who leads a house of brands, Herman International. Is segmentation a help or a hindrance in developing a brand strategy? And is there a minimum threshold for an audience base that you've seen?
Yeah, so in managing a portfolio brand specifically like ours, it's really important to understand, what and whom the brand is serving and how they're serving the customer. So segmentation per se is a tool that allows us to do that. It allows us to really tease out the audiences for the various brands, the business opportunities for the various brands, and be more intentional about how we grow and manage the brands. We can be more careful and conscious about where the gaps are within our portfolio relative to the multitude of brands that we have, and where are most importantly, where are the overlaps. And if there are overlaps, they're not accidental overlaps, they're intentional overlaps. So segmentation, at least in the context of managing a multi-brand portfolio, is a valuable tool. I think what's important to understand is the purpose of the segmentation, right? It's not segmentation for the sake of conducting an exercise. It's really, what are you going to achieve by doing the segmentation? How do you apply it to your business? And what kind of segmentation are you doing? Are you trying to just understand your audience? Are you trying to segment the market? Are you trying to segment the globe? So relatively speaking, kind of bringing all different kinds of segmentation together into a value model and definition of your brand opportunity.
It's quite interesting, Sean. Thank you so much for sharing that. David, would you like to contribute to that topic?
Sure. So I agree that segmentation is an important thing to do, and I think that's still controversial in our industry. If you look at Byron Sharp, for instance, his concerns of over focus on a particular cohort, and I think the distinction is to be very clear around segmentation as a means to design for an audience. We can't be all things to all people, but thinking more broadly in terms of who we market to. And one of the ways that we look at that is thinking about an audience-led segmentation and bringing in attitudinal component to that segmentation, so you can understand the why behind the what. Historically, that's been quite difficult, because then it becomes challenging to operationalize, because you say, well, I don't have attitudinal data in my customer database. I think depending on which market you're in, there are technologies like LiveRamp that enable you to project a research-led segmentation onto national databases to enable marketing, and that makes it much more powerful. There's also occasion-led segmentation, which enables you to understand which occasions do you have the right to win. And people buy brands but they're doing it within the context of occasion. And so understanding the linkage between occasions and audiences will really help you map the contours of who's your target audience.
That's so true about the occasion-led segmentation. Thank you so much for sharing that, David. Before I conclude this section, I want to ask Gaurav on his take on the market landscape for brand from a markets and markets perspective. Gaurav, would you like to share with us?
Sure, absolutely, Hitesh. Very interesting insights from the panel. On this, I think this decade is interesting and fueled with the disruption at every quarter. And we all have realized that. Hence, the marketers, they need to be equipped with latest evolving data trends to pick up the first mover's advantage. And I think this is where evolving AI tools and platforms like MI Cloud will play a pivotal role this decade to enable speed and scale. And the most important element over here, everybody was talking about segmentation. The thing is that it is absolutely imperative to get into segmentation. One, to figure out where to play, and also at the same time, analyze the right to win, because it's the mapping between attractiveness and right to win that will lead to the right strategy. Now, further building on this, as I said, that it's very important to leverage AI tools so that the right market mix can be figured out. This is where Markets and Markets, we offer Knowledge Store, which is a primary research-driven AI-enabled market intelligence platform, which actually helps our clients to track and monetize the 25 trillion B2B economic shift. Now, this platform is based on multiple pillars, and some of these pillars are industry coverage, disruptions, or trends in focus, the kind of insights we can share with our clients, and it also has a comprehensive repository of popular use cases and applications. So as a package, Knowledge Store has been extremely useful in leveraging and providing these insights to our clients. So yeah, I think when it comes to market assessment and segmentation, a platform like Knowledge Store can play a very important role.
That's a valid point and a real good fit there. Thanks a lot for sharing that, Gaurav. Let's get to the section number 2, which is around crafting the brand strategy. And let's start with the basics. So in relevance to 2023, what are the essential elements of a brand strategy or framework that businesses should focus on? We can start with David, who has recently actively transformed multiple known brands, with Nokia being a very recent example. David, your thoughts?
Thank you. So I think there are many frameworks that are out there to help define a brand, but I think there are sort of 3 levels that you want to solve for. One is to set the North Star and just have clarity over what is it that the brand is offering, and that's either purpose or promise. And the reason I distinguish between the two is there's been a lot of conversation in our industry about the move towards purpose, and I think that's true for many brands. Take Samsung, for instance, the relentless pursuit of the new, the democratization of technology. They're not going after just a premium niche customer. They're looking at giving progress in everybody's lives, and I think that works at the purpose level. But if you're a more grounded, let's take an extreme example, you do car washes, then purpose can take you off on getting and being irrelevant to the customer, and therefore a promise line of what's your promise to the customer about your car. And whether you go high purpose or grounded promise, the way that we would go about describing that is in 2 parts. One is what we would call an essence. It's the big idea that really captures what the spirit of you're trying to do. What we created for Walmart is now the tagline, that save money, live better. That requires initially some grounding in describing what exactly we mean by that, with a longer line, and you can sort of treat that as the undercarriage, which is that helps us get down the runway. But once we take flight and people understand the meaning, then the essence becomes that memorable call to arms across the organization and has the potential to go into a tagline. Underpinning that are what we would call the brand commitments. These are usually no more than 3 or 4 statements of what is it that we do uniquely well to deliver against that purpose. And this is not just in terms of the storytelling and the marketing message, but it's also fundamental to shaping the experience and helping create an innovation agenda so that we continue to reinvent ourselves in what we're doing to move ourselves towards and delivering the purpose. The final step is what we call a brand personality, and this is how we deliver the what of the commitments. That's how we look, how we talk, how we behave. And so those pieces clearly very necessary from a marketing perspective of what are the implications for our identity design, how are we going to develop the brand voice, but they also span into the conversations that we have around culture and working with our HR colleagues around what are the behaviors we're encouraging our employees to make, because it's their daily decisions, but ultimately ladder up to deliver and make credible the commitments and deliver on the purpose.
It's very interesting. Thank you so much, David. Sean, your comments on the same topic?
David gave a really impressive answer. That's why we hire consultants. But my point of view is, I mean, it's a little bit more simpler and probably not as well structured as David said. I think fundamentally, for my point of view, it's about who we are, right, as an organization and as a group of people. Why do we exist? Who do we serve? And how do we deliver what we promise to the audience that we're talking about? And how do we then maintain a relationship with them? So, right, that's kind of the structural flow that we use. We always start with who we are, why do we exist, who do we serve, and how well do we differentiate ourselves in the marketplace, and then at the end of the day, how we keep our promise to whoever is our core audience. And when you do that, it then brings in the multitude of things that David talked about in terms of templates or structures that you apply, and whether those apply to your messaging frameworks, your brand identity, your employee engagement, your employee identity, and those kind of things. But at the heart of it, that's sort of the model that we tend to use to establish a framework.
And I think just to build on that, I think whatever's right for your organization in helping guide people what you are consistently wanting to do is going to drive the success of the brand or not. And an important element that I encourage people to do is to think of the trade-offs. So it's all very well to deliver a sort of written description of what it is we want our brand to do, and when times are good, we can deliver that. It's when there's hard choices to be made, and here's an example from a European telecommunications company that wanted to be on the customer's side. And so you say, well, that sounds very good, and why wouldn't you be? Well, there was the Icelandic volcano that grounded flights across Europe, and suddenly they had customers stranded across Europe, and this was when you had roaming charges. So suddenly they started racking up very large bills of trying to rearrange getting home, dealing with where they were going to stay. And then the question comes as we're the operator, when a customer calls up and says, I've got a €2,000 bill, can you help me out? Do we say, yes, we're on your side? So that's a unique event that you weren't, that none of us were prepared for, so we will write that down? Or do you say, well, we're taking on a cost, and it's not our fault that people are stuck, so no, we're going to charge? And then you can evaluate from a brand lens and say to the leadership team, there isn't a right or wrong decision, but there is a path to choose. Where's the boundary for what we're willing to be when we say we're on the customer side? And if you can come up with 3 or 4 of those type of events, then it really helps your entire team know, when we say we're going to be this, what does this mean?
Yeah, I would definitely concur with David. I mean, strategy is as much about making decisions about who you are, what you want to do, as much as it is about deciding what you don't want to do. Right? And that's generally the harder part in a strategy, is your choices that you're making, and being deliberate about those choices, and then being conscious about what choices you're choosing not to make.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David and Sean. Now, moving to Tammy with the same question with a little bit of a change. Tammy, does the context change when positioning for B2B? And with your experience in corporate communication, what do you think has a stronger influence? Outside in branding, which is boardroom to sales, or interpersonal relationships, which is sales to the boardroom?
So I'll start with reputation, whether you're B2B, B2C, B2B to C. All of that has to do with reputation, and it has to do with trust. Obviously, it varies depending on the industry and the company that you're in, but that is fundamentally what people are interested in understanding. And I would say that when you think about trust and you think about how people are thinking about purchasing, it's a combination of EQ and IQ. If you're purchasing something for yourself or for your family or friends, there's probably more of a weighting of EQ on that. Because you're emotionally engaged with what that brand is, very, very much so. And you will have an affinity for that brand based on that emotional connection to it. If you look at B2B, there's also an EQ element, but it's probably more IQ because your reputation in the company and the decisions that you make also may affect your work environment and your ability to advance your career. And so there is a different weighting there. So when you look at B2B buyers, more than 70% of them are more likely to do a lot of research before they want to take into consideration a brand. And 94% are actually more inclined to do that online. So when we look at that, what that matters, how that matters from a B2B perspective is that from a marketing and communication perspective, we really need to be taking all of those attributes into consideration as we're reaching out and pulling individuals into our brand. So for instance, as we go out broadly to really build that brand image, we'll do things that really matter at the board level. So we'll do the broad PR, board influencing types of activities, a lot of those different things that really matter to build that broad image. When we look at how we actually, I call it sort of air coverage versus ground coverage. So the air coverage are those high level executive engagements, PR, et cetera, media coverage. And then when we look at ground coverage, it's really more getting into how do we always stay on through our website, through account-based marketing, through targeting various customers, through customer loyalty, et cetera. So it's a blending of all of those things that really matter from a B2B perspective.
And just two things to build on from Tammy's point. One is we often see that brand is a bigger contributor to purchase decision in B2B than B2C, and that often surprises people in large part because there's a very large intangible unknown component to B2B relative to B2C, and brand is the heuristic by which people judge, should I choose them or not? The second piece is, in every category we've ever done research in, enjoyable to work with has been one of the top three drivers of brand preference, because ultimately it's people working with people, and the ability to deal with the natural uncertainty of business is so important, not just that you're good at it, but I enjoy working with you as a human being.
And I think I think what's interesting about that point of view is that there's also this element of building a brand experience, and that has to be at every touch point. And so if you're difficult to work with as a company, whether it's B2B or whatever type of company it is, that really reflects on that, building that trust and building that loyalty and really wanting to purchase from that company. So that consistent experience across all of those touch points is critical for brand reputation.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Tammy initially said. It in the B2B context, it really comes down to your reputation, and your reputation is built through the fabric of trust, right? And trust is gained and built over time and becomes an inherent part of your brand identity. So it's not as critical about the bells and whistles of the brand identity as it is about that, your brand really means something to someone across the desk, that you are their partner, you're their supporter, you're there to help them solve a real problem in their life and their daily. Because as David pointed out, it's people do business with people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sean. And I echo that thought as well. But before I move, let's say, to the next question, I just want to turn it back to you, Sean, for my follow-up. What role do you think storytelling and experience they play in creating a compelling brand identity? And is it the product delivering an experience and creating an identity, or is it storytelling first to have a buyer's consideration?
I quite honestly would challenge the question itself, right? Your storytelling cannot be distinct from there's a different brand and storytelling for your brand, and then there's a different storytelling framework for your product. They need to be inherently connected. The purpose of your brand or the promise of your brand is really you're solving a problem for someone in a way that's unique, differentiated, and of higher value. And if you do that, your mechanism of doing that is through your product offering. So the story frameworks are intricately connected with each other. You can't have a storytelling framework for the brand that makes a promise and then that's disconnected from what your product's actually doing, right? And if you start at the product level and you have a satisfied audience with the product, you don't want it to be a transactional one-time relationship with a specific product. So you have to think about going to market in a way that you're weaving your value to the consumer along with, for lack of a better word, the technical benefits of the product. So inherently, you're building not only a satisfaction with a particular product, but you're building that long-term emotional connection and trust in the brand so that they become a long-term loyal customer of yours, whether it's a repeat purchase or it's an expanded portfolio of products.
Makes a lot of sense, Sean. Thank you so much. David, your thoughts on the same point?
So I agree with Sean, which is they're intimately linked. Story can amplify the experience, but it can't make up for a poor experience. And you're not going to get to the experience unless you've been introduced to a story that helps navigate you there. First point. The second point is if you go back 20, 30 years, marketing was a bit of an island whose job was demand generation. And you often saw marketing campaigns that bore little relation to actually what the experience was going to be, because I just wanted to create that demand. And then people would flow in and then they'd purchase the product and then it becomes someone else's problem about repurchase. Well, social networking killed all of that because people shared their experiences. And this is why storytelling can amplify, but it can't go against the tide. There's a great Coca-Cola exec on YouTube talking about the number of views which Coca-Cola advertising, which is very substantial, creates is dwarfed by user-generated content about Coca-Cola. And the reality is that's true of all brands. And so where the sort of modern marketer has gone is that recognition that marketing needs to be fully integrated into and influencing the end-to-end journey, story, but also using brand as a lens to apply of what should that branded experience be, and taking a customer view versus in a lot of organizations, naturally you end up with product P&Ls and it become much more of an integrated approach to what we deliver. Those companies that have kept marketing as demand generation create a struggle for themselves that it's still disconnected between store and experience, and that's always going to do worse than someone and the companies that are building brands connected across the two.
And a key point I think there is, as David mentioned, can you actually turn your consumers into your storytellers, right? That's when the magic happens. And that only happens if you actually deliver on your promise, right? Not just tell a great story, but if a great story pulls somebody in, they experience your product and the experience really meets their needs and expectations, or actually even exceeds it, they become your storytellers. And that's when amplification happens, which is what we all strive for.
Absolutely true, Sean. The amplification of stories said by people other than us is definitely the most impactful part there can be. So before I conclude this section, Gaurav, your take from markets and markets perspective on adding value in these steps?
Sure, Hitesh. Before I get into the specifics, just wanted to touch upon the brand identity topic. So in some of our conversations with our clients, when we start with the branding exercise, we debate a lot on how to establish the brand identity, which is essentially, what makes you unique beyond the business. Like in case of GE, it's all about quality and Six Sigma. In case of Apple, you're talking about design-led technology. So that is basically the starting point. And then we get into other elements which are related to positioning, proposition, and campaigns. But having said that, now coming back to the storytelling theme. So what I'm picking up here is how can storytelling be created outside in? Now that to me can tell the most relatable stories. And for that to happen, a strong voice of customer analysis and absorption becomes pivotal. And that is where I believe that Markets and Markets has a comprehensive portfolio of services that can help clients in doing voice of customer analysis. Now, there are multiple dimensions that we cover as a part of this framework, starting from identification of unmet needs of the customers, identifying their pain points, understanding their purchase process, also understanding the switching criteria, and what criteria can help in building a compelling ROI case. We also get into details of brand perception of our client versus the competitors across the different customer segments. So this is how we typically help our clients when it comes to doing voice of customer analysis. And very soon we'll be adding another theme to this framework, which should be around establishing product market fit, which is very relevant in today's time.
Most definitely, Gaurav. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, so we're moving on to the last section of today's conversation, which is around engaging with target customers. Now, we are already halfway in 2023, where digital transformation is at the cusp of AI transformation. So what are some of the innovative ways to gather customer feedback and insights? Also, what are some emerging trends and technologies that businesses should consider in their brand strategy for 2023? So David, I'll turn it over to you for your comments and thoughts on this.
So I think all of us have been bombarded by the opportunity that artificial intelligence, and particularly the generational form of it, is offering, and the pace of change is accelerating so much that it feels like something new is coming out every week, which makes it challenging to stay on top of things. For me, the sort of two levels to what AI has the potential to enable. The first one is really around speeding up or lowering costs of existing ways that we get customer feedback. So we all know, for instance, that on Zoom, for a long time, they've been able to give you a transcript. I think what an AI enables us to do is not just have the transcript, but summarize what are the key insights that came out of that conversation. I think that can be very helpful. If you take it into, if you did focus group research, then typically you would wait a week or 2 weeks for the facilitator to create a document that summarized all of the insight that came out of that. Well, you can get that immediately as a first run coming out. So I think in that sense, there are lots of opportunities where we're going to see specialist ways that AI can supplement human intelligence and speed that up. The next level is starting to get into more disruptive examples. And we're experimenting one, which is called a synthetic interviewee. So what we can do is just tell this technology, I want to find cat owners who are thinking about insurance, and it will scan all of the sort of social content like Reddit, Twitter, and the like. It will amalgamate the relevant audience, and then it applies the model, which enables us then to have a conversation with the combined knowledge of cat owners thinking about insurance, to enable us very rapidly to have a conversation that historically would take us 3 or 4 weeks to go about going through a research exercise to find the right people, bring them into an environment, have the conversation, and generate into insight. And so that agility, particularly as the pace of change of things increases, could be very useful. I think our caveat is that generational AI actually isn't intelligent. It's a pattern matching, particularly through these large language models, that is trying to give you what you want, and therefore quite often hallucinates. And I think we've seen that in the press. For example, a lawyer down in Texas who submitted a document that was generated by AI that had made up particular evidence. And so I would be very cautious about using that on its own at the moment. I would do it more as I can get a rapid pulse to give myself some more hypotheses and then rely on accelerated traditional approaches. And there's a great Martin Lindstrom quote, which is, If you want to really know the animals, go to the Amazon, not the zoo. And I think it's important that we still see customers in the context of what they're doing to truly learn about them. And for the moment, AI is not a replacement for that.
Sounds reasonable, David. I think it's still a long way to go. But Tammy, I'll turn over to you. Your thoughts on the same topic?
Yes, absolutely. So I think a lot of what David said resonated quite a lot with me. It's interesting. I look at AI very much as the beginning of the internet. And if you remember the start of the internet, it was really about information going out there, and everyone was so excited to suddenly be connected to all of this information that they perhaps never had seen before. And it did amalgamate a lot of different content sources and pull them together. I think we also know that with that came people's opinions and a lot of different, information that we didn't know what the source was, and we didn't know if it was actually factual or just someone's thoughts. And so I think it's very similar with AI. I think it is very transformational from an overall paradigm shift perspective. And one of the ways that I look at it, and it's not humanized yet because of all the things that David mentioned, but I do think that at some point it will become more humanized. And so I look at it as almost an addition to diversity. So when I talk about that and think about that, it's another viewpoint coming in. Just like everyone else has a viewpoint. Some is based on their own opinion, some is based on fact, but everybody's formulating something based on where they're starting. And I look at AI as being another diverse source that comes in with a unique point of view that contributes into whatever that conversation is, or whatever that program is, or whatever it is that is being determined. And then I think at that point, everyone can determine, is this something that is relevant? Is this something that we want to pull from? Or is it really a little too risky? And we are testing this in a number of different areas within Hitachi Vantara. So going back to the voice of the customer, we do have a program that we're building around a number of different areas of voice of the customer. So the traditional areas are obviously third-party research, which is qualitative. There's also net promoter score, anonymous customer reviews, and then also the kind of the multi-channel listening, which is through social media, through emails, through digital access, that kind of thing. And so the more that we can start to think about how can AI play a role in that, where it's sifting through that information and pulling it together, then we can have people like myself and my team and others take a look at that and really determine what makes the most sense and what can we act upon as a company based on that information. But I do think, going back to the humanizing, I do think that over time, there will be more of that complexity added into AI and the technology, where it will become more human. And I do think that will redefine what human means in the term human in society, because I do think that it is moving in that direction.
Definitely. And won't that be something to look forward to? So my next question is to Tammy. Again, I'm coming back to you, Tammy. So how important do you think is on-ground engagement? Because we kind of lost it at the start of this decade, and we see it picking up back slowly. But is there a scale issue with the on-ground engagement, or these kind of engagements are specifically preferred for certain target markets? What's your opinion?
So I think we all experienced after COVID that there was this, and we did certainly, that there was this huge desire for everyone to get together again. There was this vacuum that happened, and Zoom and Teams and other video conferencing tools can only help so much. They're fantastic, but really being able to look across the table at someone and be in an environment and network with them is a completely different experience. So we did see a big desire to do that. And with that also came, flight restrictions and complications, the economy changing, people actually really determining why they want to travel and how they want to travel and things like that. So what we've found is that there's sort of two schools of thought that are happening, and we're actually applying this within Hitachi Vantara. One is that people that want to travel a distance actually are looking for a destination first. They're looking for a destination, they're looking for an experience, and then they want the conference that you have to actually fulfill the content needs that they're looking for. It used to be the other way around. They used to come because they wanted to be at the conference, and then they would get this experience around it secondarily. So that becomes very, very important, because now what we're doing is we're looking at where can we have these incredible destinations and draw people there, and then have the conference be a part of that. So it's a full immersive experience for them. And that's pretty much at the high end, obviously. And then we also are doing very localized, sort of intimate roundtable discussions in our regions, in our countries, where people really don't have to travel. They can speak in their language. We can really localize that experience, and we can pop that up very quickly and at a nominal cost. And then in between, we're doing hybrid. So we're also making sure that we're providing a platform where we can bring people to that platform to have a virtual event experience, but we can also have it in person at the same time, so that we can scale and be able to do that. So I think the bottom line is what we're really trying to do is continue to adapt to the environment and adapt to what our customers need, and really be present where they are and how we can fulfill them to really drive growth. That's, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do, is build awareness and drive growth.
Most definitely. Thank you so much for that amazing response, Tammy. So final thoughts, doing more with less. How relevant is this term today, and what are some catalysts that can actually make your brand strategy framework sustainable for a long-term equity realization? And Sean, I'll ask you to lead this. And what's your take on the fact that there is a need for a long-term sustainable brand strategy framework, even though there are, let's say, questions around its existence in the first place?
But there shouldn't be a question about the existence of a brand strategy framework. If you're in an organization that questions the need to have a brand strategy framework, I would say that's a boardroom conversation that needs to happen soon. Your brand really is an extension of who you are as an organization, right? Whether its purposes for recruiting, employee engagement, or it's for your go-to-market, your brand needs to mean something to whoever you're catering to, right? And yourself, because it gives you a North Star, gives you a sense of direction of where you're going and why you're going there. So the need for a brand strategy is definitely there. How you get to it, there's always different routes to get to it, different frameworks you can use, different methodologies you can use. What purpose it serves for you, particularly as an organization, can vary depending on the maturity of the organization, the construct of the business, and so on. And but the longevity of a business, in my opinion, is intricately tied to your brand and your identity that's defined by your brand. And because that will always tell you who you are, why you exist, what's your purpose, and what are your values that keep you going. And they will give you the resilience that you need to go and through various fluctuations of any kind, right? Whether they're economic fluctuations, whether they're a pandemic, whatever it might be. There seems to be a new one every month now. But that gives your business the true resilience to withstand and continue with that common sense of purpose and delivering on the promise you need. The doing more with less thing, that I can't remember a time in my career when that hasn't existed. And we tend to equate that more to dollars, because as marketers, we love to spend by big media budgets and all of that good stuff. But in my opinion, the thought process behind the doing more with less is how can you get more creative? How can you get more in tune with your audience, and really, instead of blanket type of strategies and blanket type of executions, really get focused, hone in, be smart, be creative, be the ice bucket challenge people, be the Nathan hot dog eating contest people, right? Be creative, do what's right for your brand. You don't really have to have always, the CPG type of budgets to sustain a healthy, sustainable, long-term relationship with your consumer and with your customer. So, focus less on the dollars and use that challenge of doing more with less as a challenge of being more creative rather than focusing on, the spend involved.
No, definitely, nothing can replace creativity. Not now, not ever. Finally, Gaurav, how do you summarize this entire conversation from markets and markets point of view?
Sure, Hitesh. No, again, very interesting insights. Um, so my sense is that tools, channels, and tech, they remain ever evolving, but they are useless unless they deliver scale. So I think a man-machine model to thought leadership, account enablement, sales enablement can help deliver scale. And this is where the comprehensive suite of services that we have under the name of account enablement and thought leadership can be really handy. So let me get into the specifics. So what do we mean by account enablement? So as a part of this offering, we provide insights on a target company or account, assisting the sales team of our clients to effectively target that account. And then also at the same time, the endeavor is to ensure that the sales teams, they stay relevant and stay informed of the revenue shifts that can impact their client. That is extremely important. And within account enablement, there are two broadly components that we deliver on. One is CXO narrative, wherein we identify the future hotbeds and the adjacent markets where the CXOs should focus on. And at the same time, we do a very comprehensive white space analysis of that particular account against the competitors to identify new areas to enter. And then there is a flagship product of ours called Account IQ, wherein we do a very deep analysis of a particular account as in a company, ranging from business overview to analyzing their business segments, then getting into organic and inorganic growth initiatives, understanding the industry footprint, and then at the same time, identification of addressable opportunities for our client. Now, moving to the other dimension, which is thought leadership. So, my view is that thought leadership marketing is an integral component of an organization's brand and demand generation efforts. And markets, we partner from concept ideation through execution by providing a unique range of products and services for every thought leadership marketing element that a CMO must envision. So I'm essentially talking about answers to questions such as how confident are you about your brand recall in your target sectors? Let's say you're struggling to define your accurate positioning in certain micro markets. You're struggling to grow your MQL to SQL conversions. So this is where our suite of thought leadership properties really helps our clients in accomplishing all these objectives. And how do we actually deliver? So we deliver through content in the form of blogs, white papers, films, infographics, and then also at the same time through channels, which could be roundtables, webinars, and podcasts. So all in all, this portfolio of services helps our clients in addressing their challenges related to both account enablement and thought leadership. So this is where I believe that these offerings can go a long way in terms of helping our clients achieve scale, which is absolutely imperative, to drive all these conversations.
Thank you so much, Gaurav, for that narrative. All right, so we have officially reached the end of the episode. Any last minute thoughts from anyone? David, would you like to summarize it for us? What's your key takeaway?
I think we're all agreeing that brand brings benefit to organizations and as an amplifier of business performance. I think it needs to be framed so that everyone's clear on what do we mean and what are we asking our people to do, and a recognition that brand is something that, while it may be created by marketing, is something that needs to be owned and delivered across the end-to-end experience in the whole organization.
Very succinct and very insightful. Thank you so much, David. Sean, what's your key takeaway?
I think a couple of things that I'd add, obviously the value of the brand and having a brand strategy in place. The other things I think are don't get bogged down with the bright shiny object of the day in terms of your toolkit, right? Whether it's AI, whether it was something else 6 months ago, and there'll be something else 6 months after. Focus on your needs and what you need to achieve out of it, and don't use a steak knife to try and cut bread or vice versa, right? Right tool for the right need. And then second thing, I think going back to the spending point is, don't take pride in outspending your competitor, right? Take pride in being outsmarting your competitor.
Absolutely. That's the need of the hour. Thank you so much, Sean. Tammy, what's your key takeaway from the session?
Yes. So from my perspective, brand is all about the experience, and the experience has to be consistent. It has to be trusted, and it has to be at all levels for all people. One time brand was at the highest level, and it was sort of out in the ethos, and nobody really understood unless it was something that was happening out there. And now I think it's come to the ground, and it's actually people very, they personalize it, and we all own the brand. It's a part of embodying that experience that delivers that to customers and partners and so forth that makes the difference.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, David. Thank you, Tammy. And thank you so much, Gaurav, for joining us. It was a pleasure hosting you today. And thank you so much once again from Markets and Markets. Thank you.